Welcome back to ESBR Boxing's YouTube channel. It's Niall, and I'm delighted as always to be joined by Thomas. And we're here looking at what's next for Jaron Boots Ennis after last night's blistering performance in stopping David Avanesian in 5 rounds in Philadelphia to retain his IBF World Welterweight title and, of course, maintain his unbeaten record. So surely some big fights on the horizon for Boots. Thomas, I hope you're well, first of all. So yeah, let's jump in. As I say, the talent is there. It's clear as day to see. With Boots Ennis, it really is. Just yeah, a really supreme fighter. So I suppose we'll move on to say what could be next. Now, he's had what over 30 fights now. He's 27. He's hitting his prime. So there is big fights out there for him. The first couple of names really I want to discuss is in his current division, welterweight. Welterweight's a very interesting division at the minute. It's not the kind of glamour division that it once was. It's a bit up in the air at the minute, especially with Crawford gone now, the former undisputed champion. But you've got Ennis with the IBF title, and of course you've got Amantas Stanionis, who's the WBA regular champion, and Mario Barrios, who holds the WBC crown. If Jaron Ennis was to kind of jump into a big unification fight with one of those names next, whether it be Stanionis or Barrios, how would you see him getting on against either of those names if that was to be next?
Well, honestly, I would favor him heavily over both of those guys. I think he beats both of them pretty handily. And I think for him, it's really just a matter of whether or not he can get those fights just because of where those guys are at, like on the political landscape of boxing. They're both on the PBC side of the fence. So again, something, you know, uh, something major would have to happen to get those fights on. But yeah, I think if he's able to, Boots unifies the entire division, just given the state of where the division's at right now with all the new champions, like you mentioned, Barrios, Stanionis, and then also Brian Norman Jr. So yeah, he would have to fight all three of those guys to unify the division, and I think he beats them. I think this crop of welterweights is just they don't really have anything for boots.
Yeah, no, it's hard to disagree with anything you've said there. With the current landscape of this welterweight division, I think Boots is undoubtedly the number one by a long way. He may lack the kind of standout huge name so far on his resume, but I think if it did come to unifications with the likes of Brian Norman Jr., Stanionis, Barrios, I do think he beats them all. Pretty comfortably too. Especially Barrios and Norman Jr. No disrespect to those guys, but we're talking about in my opinion, a pound for pound, future pound for pound number one here in Boots Ennis. Of course, if you can get the fights, as you mentioned, with the whole political landscape of Stanionis and Barrios being PBC guys, and so hopefully we can see that if he is sticking around at 147. But I suppose out of the names we mentioned. I do like Stanionis. I think he's a really exciting fighter to watch. And maybe his style, is come forward, aggression, volume punching, explosiveness could cause Ennis problems, particularly early. The one question is about Ennis so far is he hasn't really had one landed on his whiskers yet. He hasn't had the chin tested. Um, properly yet at this stage, but I think Stanionis has the aggression and the power to definitely cause him problems. But I just think it comes down to Ennis being too versatile for him, too well rounded, and of course a big puncher in his own right. So I just think, yeah, Ennis would have just too much tools to his belt for any of them guys.
Right.
I think Stanionis would be, as I mentioned, probably the toughest test, but I go for an Ennis decision win there, quite wide in the end, maybe 116, 112-ish. But I
I
do.
agree with you. And I will say, sorry to interrupt,
No, you're fine.
at the very least, the Stanionis fight is probably like I think the most entertaining out of those. Given the reasons you just mentioned, I think Stanionis would bring the fight, and I think the fact that we don't know much about his chins, I'll make it exciting too, because what's going to happen when he gets hit with a big shot, and what's going to happen when Boots gets hit with a big shot. So, um, yeah, that's a fun fight. But again, I don't think we've really noticed any chin problems on Boots, and I see him winning that fight pretty quickly.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's such a fascinating clash of styles, Boots and Stanionis. So I think we have kind of come to the conclusion that if he is staying at welterweight, Stanionis is the fight that we both like to see, to be honest, out of the other belt holders there. So yeah, cleans up at welterweight and Arrow is. Now let's talk about the big one, a potential super fight if he was to move up against the former welterweight king, the undisputed king, Terence Crawford, of course fighting Israel Madrimov in August for the WBA title. A tough fight in its own right, but let's say Crawford gets through that and, it happens. A passing of the torch fight, as it's been described. The pound for pound star of today versus a future pound for pound star. Boots Ennis versus Crawford. How would you see it going down? At 154 or 147, I suppose, because I'd say Crawford could come back down if the money was right for that fight, and the time was right. So how would you see it going?
Yeah, at either weight, it's a great matchup, but it's just so hard for me to pick against Bud Crawford. Just given how, I mean, every time seemingly I think that he's going to have a tough fight, I just get proven wrong there, and and he just kind of makes me look stupid. So I feel like I can't pick against him at this point, and yeah, you have to that all that championship experience and big fight experience, you would have to think would play like a major factor in that matchup. Um, but by the time that fight happens, Crawford's going to be, probably in his late 30s, 37, 38 by the time that fight happens. So that's going to be a factor as well. So honestly, the longer that takes for this fight to happen, the more interesting I think it will be. But I do want to see it as soon as possible.
Yeah, it's you're right in that you can't back against Terence Crawford these days, but when we're talking about Boots Ennis, I might surprise here. I am gonna back against Terence Crawford. I think Boots Ennis could beat Crawford. I think he could beat him if they fought next. For a number of reasons, really, it's been described as I said, a real passing of the torch fight, two kind of similar fighters, but one of the reasons is what you just said. Crawford is not getting any younger. He's 35 now. He might he'd probably be late 30s if this fight was to ever happen. So he's not getting any younger at all, although he showed no signs of real decline, but it has to catch up with him at some stage. And in my opinion, I think if it was to happen at 154, say if Crawford picks a title up, I think Boots Ennis, I think we could see the best of Boots Ennis at 154, to be honest, if he moves up. He's a big, big welterweight. Um, looked quite gaunt at the weigh-in the other day for this fight, so maybe a move to 154 is sooner than we think for him. So I do think he's going to hit his peak in that division. And I just think he's like this guy for me just oozes future pound for pound number one quality. He can do everything. He's quick, he can box, he's big, and he can really punch hard. He's not all flash. He can really bang as well. So I think, in my opinion, he could be getting Terence Crawford at a really good time. And I think Jaron Ennis would beat Terence Crawford if they fought next. And I could be left with egg on my face after that. as you mentioned, like we have done in the past if we bet against Crawford, but I just think Ennis is that good. So that's the highest compliment I can pay him, that I do think he would beat Terence Crawford if they fought next. But as you say, hopefully we get to see it. You know, it's a fascinating fight. It's a huge fight, especially over in your nation in America. You know, it does serious numbers. So yeah, let's see. We'll wait for Crawford to get through Madrimov first, and then we'll see what happens in that one. And hopefully we can set it up for the future. So yeah, that's all we have time for on this one. Just discussing what's next for Jaron Ennis, what could be next for the unbeaten star, and is he unbeatable? You know, will anybody take a scalp anytime soon? Let us know what you think in the comments. Do you agree with us? You know, does he beat all the welterweight champions? Does he come unstuck against Crawford? Does he beat Crawford? Let us know what you think. As always, don't forget, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel at ESBR Boxing, follow us on all social media with great content, interviews, reviews, previews, predictions, breakdowns, all that good stuff. And yeah, we're also on Spotify, back on Spotify. So if you prefer the audio content, give us a download on that and help us rise up through those charts. Thomas, it's been a pleasure and take care.
Thank you. You